I'm Edwin Ebony. I am from Ghana originally. I've been in Colombia for, so this July will be close to 4 years. Um, and I'm in ELPA, PhD student, PK12 track. So growing up in Ghana, just a bit of context, Ghana has approximately 72, some say 76 languages. We're not sure yet what the number is yet. But so then all these languages, you're growing up with all these languages surrounding you. I started school with English. English was the main language of instruction in Ghana. So I started with that. But at home, my parents are both Ghana speakers. And so we spoke Ghana at home. Because they are educated as well, we spoke Ghana English often. And I live in a community where it's mixed because we have different people living in the same community. So we have Tree, Fanti, Akan, Hausa, different people live in the same community. So you end up, if you make friends with them, you end up picking up on languages as you grow up. I had a teacher from Mizzou, a visiting professor from Mizzou in Romance languages, who taught us for a year. And he told us about Mizzou. Because I didn't have any idea where Mizzou was. I didn't know that even Missouri existed, not to even talk of Colombia. Because all we saw about US was Hollywood and movies, nothing else about pretty much about the US. And so he told us about Mizzou. He said, can apply, I write a recommendation for you. So he sort of guided us through the whole process. And that's why we ended up in Mizzou. Americans want precise statements. They want you to get straight to the point. They want you to show links between your first paragraph to your second paragraph, your first sentence to the second sentence to the third. And there's not any element of suspense in the way Americans write. But Ghanaian writing is full of suspense. Because the moment you start reading, you don't know where this is going. You don't know how it's going to end. And we think that is the way writing should be. You need to get your audience interested in how you're writing. So growing up in Ghana, we always had this thing we did, like there's this story time that we had. We didn't always have, we always had problems with electricity and things like that. So usually at night, like people would gather and we tell stories. I try to do that with my son now. But we tell stories, we make up stories, and then at the end, people figure out what the moral of the story is. And so, like from that way of thinking, the moral of the story or the main idea of the story is at the end of it. And so you need to set up the stage, like when you start, like set up the stage with who the characters are, whatever it is. And so that's one way of being, like telling stories in Ghana. So if a child grows up in Ghana like that, and then they come to the classroom, they're thinking, oh wait, there's this nice way that you know, the community and everything tells stories. I'm going to write the same way. I'm going to write like that. I had a conversation with a colleague who felt a professor was being biased towards her because of the way she wrote. And this is a student who had studied English for a very long time, has been writing English for as long as she remembers. She had to pass English exams and things like that. And so she doesn't see anything wrong with, like grammatically wrong with the English she writes. But she feels that her identity, people who come from like her racial group are seen as people who don't write well. And so she thinks the professor approaches her way of writing like already with a bias that there's probably going to be a grammatical error in this. And she doesn't get feedback for her content. She always gets feedback for her grammar. and she doesn't think there's something wrong with her grammar. When she even presents in classroom, she still gets corrections about grammar, not about the way she presented or the content of what she presented on. And so she feels like she's not comfortable in that classroom space. I think it would first start from like just generally acknowledging and recognize there are different ways of writing, and that different languages and different cultures have different ways of thinking about writing and speaking and all the different modalities. And so it just comes from accepting that, professors acknowledging that, accepting different ways of writing and guiding students, show them examples of what academic writing language has to look like, what it has to be like, and then guide them through it.